Hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome in, guys. We start a new book today. Oh my gosh, we started a new book today. Um, The Psychology of Money. I don't know if you guys have heard of this book. It's a very popular book. So, if you haven't heard of it, I'm here to show you. I I hate to side eye you like that, but so this book, The Psychology of Money, Timeless Lessons on Wealth, Greed, and Happiness by Morgan Housel. Okay, I'm super excited because I've been wanting to read this book for a mignon. For a mignon. Oh my gosh, welcome in, welcome in. Have you guys heard of this book? Have you guys Have you heard of this book? Has anyone in here read this book before? Read us a passage. Oh, trust and believe I'm reading a passage today. That's absolutely happening. It's happening. So I read every morning. For those of you guys that don't know me already, I get up, I read every morning, whether it be just 10 pages or a full chapter of a book. We just finished Brain Science for the Soul by Adriana Vela. It was a good book. Do I have it nearby? Yeah, I do. It's right here. This one. We just finished Brain Science for the Soul together. It was quite the read. Learned a lot from that book. You can't tell me y'all not excited. You can't. You wouldn't be able to convince me that you don't have some form of like explicit excitement to like getting into this book. So on the back it says doing well with money isn't necessarily about what you know. It's about how you behave. And behavior is hard to teach, even to really smart people. Money, investing, personal finance, and business decisions is typically taught as a math based field where data and formulas tell you exactly what to do. But in the real world, people don't make decisions based or don't make financial decisions on a spreadsheet. They make them at the dinner table or in a meeting room where personal history, your own unique view of the world, ego, pride, marketing, and odd incentives are scrambled together. In The Psychology of Money, award-winning author Morgan Housel shares 19 short stories exploring the strange ways people think about money and teaches you how to make better sense of one's life, one of life's most important topics. Manyan. Sweet freaking manyan. Guys, I'm like feeling this book. I'm feeling this book so heavy. Hello, everyone. Welcome in. I think we got enough people who have slid by for me to start reading the book. So I don't really want to go through the introduction unless you guys specifically want the introduction, but I'm going to skip it because I'm not going to read it. Okay, so the first chapter is called No One's Crazy. Your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.000000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. Now, I kind of already read this chapter, but you'll love it. You'll love it. Thanks so much, guys, for liking the live. I appreciate you guys sharing the live. This is how we get out to more people. If you don't know me already, I'm Des. I read every morning, and I try to make content about financial literacy so we can all get out the hood, because don't nobody want to die poor. I know I don't want to die poor. Okay. Let me get comfortable. I'm so excited. Okay. Okay. Um, Let me tell you about a problem. It might make you feel better about what you do with your money and less judgmental about what other people do with theirs. People do some crazy things with money, but no one is crazy. Here's the thing. People from different generations, raised by different parents who earned different incomes and held different values in different parts of the world, born into different economies, experiencing different job markets with different incentives and different degrees of luck, learn very different lessons. Clock 'em. Everyone has their own unique experience with how the world works, and what you've experienced is more compelling than what you learned secondhand. So all of us, You, me, everyone go through life anchored to a set of views about how money works that vary wildly from person to person. What seems crazy to you might make sense to me. The person who grew up in poverty thinks about risks and reward in ways the child of a wealthy banker cannot fathom if he tried. The person who grew up when inflation was high experienced something the person who grew up with stable prices never had to. The stockbroker who lost everything during the Great Depression experienced something the tech worker basking in the glory of the late 1990s can't imagine. The Australian who hasn't seen a recession in 30 years has experienced something no American ever has. Sweet, 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 sweet. Ah! Okay. On and on, the list of experiences is endless. You know stuff about money that I don't, and vice versa. You go through life with different beliefs, goals, and forecasts than I do. That's not because one of us is smarter than the other or has better information. It's because we've had different lives shaped by different and equally persuasive experiences. Your personal experiences with money make up maybe point zero. Hold on. Here we go again. Thank you for the heart puffs. I appreciate it, Max. Thank you. Wait. Okay, let me get close. 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. So equally smart people can disagree about how and why recessions happen, how you should invest your money, what you should prioritize, how much risk you should take, and so on. In this book, on 1930s America, thank you, Frederick Lewis Allen wrote that the Great Depression marked millions of Americans inwardly for the rest of their lives. But there was a range of experiences. 25 years later, as he was running for president, John F. Kennedy was asked by a reporter what he remembered from the Depression. He remarked, I'm gonna quote this through all the way through because I'm not sure. Thank you for the heart me, Robert. I appreciate you. Thank you for the follow, guys. Oh my god, y'all gonna make me cry. Okay, I have no first-hand knowledge of the Great Depression. My family had one of the great fortunes of the world, and it was worth more than ever then. Okay. We had bigger houses, more servants, we traveled more. About the only thing that I saw directly when my father hired some extra gardeners just to give them a job so they could eat. I really did not learn about the Depression until I read about it at Harvard. Okay, JFK. This was a major point in the 1960 election. How people thought, how people thought, could someone with no understanding of the biggest economic story in the last generation be put in charge of the economy? It was, in many ways, overcome only by JFK's experience in World War II. That was the other most widespread emotional experience of the previous generation, and something his primary opponent, Hubert Humphrey, didn't have. The challenge for us is that no amount of studying or open-mindedness can genuinely recreate the power of fear and uncertainty. I can read about what it was like to lose everything during the Great Depression, but I don't have the emotional scars of those who actually experienced it. And the person who lived through it can't fathom why someone like me would come across as complacent about things like owning stocks. We see the world through a different lens. Spreadsheets can model the historic frequency of big stock market declines, but they can't model the feeling of coming home, looking at your kids, and wondering if you've made a mistake that will impact their lives. Studying history makes you feel like you understand something, but until you've lived through it and personally felt its consequences, you may not understand it enough to change your behavior. We all think we know how the world works, but we've only experienced a tiny sliver of it. And as investor Michael Batnick says, some lessons have to be experienced before they can be understood. We are all victims in different ways to that truth. Hi, Crispy. Welcome to the live. Thank you guys for the love. I appreciate the likes. Let me continue on because we got like another page and something. In 2006, economist Ulrich Malmendier, Malmendier, Ulrich Mendier, and Stefan Nagel from the National Bureau of Economic Research dug through 50 years of the survey of consumer finances, a detailed look at what, in theory, people should make investment decisions based on their goals and the characteristics of the investment options available to them at the time. But that's not what people do. The economists found that people's lifetime investments decisions are heavily anchored to the experiences those investors had in their own generation, especially experiences early in their adult life. If you grew up when inflation was high, you invested less of your money in bonds later in life compared to those who grew up when inflation was low. If you happen to grow up when the stock market was strong, you invested more of your money in stocks later in life compared to those who grew up when stocks were weak. The Economist wrote, "Our findings suggest that individual investors' willingness to bear risk depends on their personal history. Not intelligence or education or sophistication, just the dumb luck of when and where you were born." The Financial Times interviewed Bill Gross, the famed bond manager, in 2019. Gross admits that he would probably not be where he is today if he had been born a decade earlier or later. The piece said Gross's career coincided most perfectly with a generational collapse in interest rates that gave bond prices a tailwind. That kind of thing doesn't just affect the opportunities you come across, it affects what you think about those opportunities when they're presented to you. To Gross, bonds were wealth-generating machines. To his father's generation, who grew up with and endured higher inflation, they might be seen as wealth incinerators. Oh, okay. The differences in how people have experienced money are not small, even among those you might think are pretty similar. Take stocks. If you were born in 1970, the S&P 500 increased almost tenfold adjusted for inflation during your teens and 20s. That's an amazing return. If you were born in 1950, the market went literally nowhere in your teens and 20s, adjusted for inflation. Two groups of people, separated by chance of their birth year, go through life with a completely different view on how the stock market works. Or inflation. If you were born in 1960s America, inflation during your teens and 20s, your young impressionable years when you're developing a base knowledge of how the economy works, sent prices up more than threefold. That's a lot. You remember gas lines and getting paychecks that stretched noticeably less far than the ones before them. But if you were born in 1990, inflation has been so low for your whole life that it's probably never crossed your mind. Oh my gosh. America's nationwide unemployment in November 2009 was around 10%, but the unemployment rate for African American males aged 16 to 19 without a high school diploma was 49%. For Caucasian females over age 45 with a college degree, it was 4%. Local stock markets in Germany and Japan were wiped out during World War II. Entire regions were bombed out. At the end of the war, German farms only produced enough food to provide the country's citizens with 1,000 calories a day. Compare that to the U.S., where the stock market more than doubled from 1941 through the end of 1945, and the economy was the strongest it had been in almost 2 decades. No one should expect members of these groups to go through the rest of their lives thinking the same thing about inflation, or the stock market, or unemployment, or money in general. No one should expect them to respond to financial information the same way. No one should assume they are influenced by the same incentives. No one should expect them to trust the same sources of advice. No one should expect them to agree on what matters, what's worth it, what's likely to happen next, and what's the best path forward. Oh my goodness. I thank you guys so much for the likes. I appreciate it. Their view of money was formed in different worlds, And when that's the case, a view about money that one group of people thinks is outrageous can make perfect sense to another. A few years ago, the New York Times did a the New York Times did a story on working conditions of Foxconn, the massive Taiwanese electronics manufacturer. The conditions were often atrocious. Readers were highly upset. But a fascinating response to the story came from the nephew of a Chinese worker who wrote in the comment section, "My aunt worked several years in what Americans call sweatshops. It was hard work, long hours, small wage, poor working conditions. Do you know what my aunt did before she worked in one of those factories? She was a prostitute." The the idea of working in a sweatshop compared to that old lifestyle is an improvement, in my opinion. I should still be quoting. "I know that my aunt would rather be exploited by an evil capitalist boss for a couple of dollars than have her body be exploited by several men for pennies. That is why I am upset by many Americans thinking we do not have the same opportunities as the West. Our governmental infrastructure is different. The country is different. Yes, factory is hard labor. Could it be better? Yes, but only when you compare such to American jobs." That's a good like way to put it, I feel like. I don't know what to make of this. Part of me wants to argue fiercely, part of me wants to understand, but mostly it's an example of how different experiences can lead to vastly different views within topics that one side intuitively thinks should be black and white. Every decision people make with money is justified by taking the information they have at the moment and plugging it into their unique mental model of how the world works. Those people can be misinformed, they can have incomplete information, they can be bad at math, they can be persuaded by rotten marketing, they can have no idea what they're doing, they can misjudge the consequences of their actions. Oh, can they ever? But every financial decision a person makes sense to them in that moment and checks the boxes that they need to check. They tell themselves a story about what they're doing and why they're doing it, and that story has been shaped by their own unique experiences. Take a simple example: lottery tickets. Americans spend more on them than movies, video games, music, sporting events, and books combined. And who buys them? Mostly poor people. The lowest income households in the U.S. on average spend $412 a year on lotto tickets, 4 times the amount of those in the highest income groups. 40% of Americans cannot come up with $400 in an emergency, which is to say, those buying $400 in lottery tickets are by and large the same people who say they couldn't come up with $400 in an emergency. I'm sorry, this book is clocking people now. They are blowing their safety nets on something with a 1 in a million's chance of hitting it big. That seems crazy to me. It probably seems crazy to you too. But I'm not in the lowest income group. You're likely not either. So it's hard for many of us to intuitively grasp the subconscious reasoning of how low-income lottery ticket buyers, but strain a little, you can imagine, but strain a little, and you can imagine it going something like this. Okay. All right, okay. We live paycheck to paycheck, and saving seems out of reach. Our prospects for much higher wages seem out of reach. We can't afford nice vacations, new cars, health insurance, or homes in safe neighborhoods. We can't put our kids through college without crippling debt. Most of the stuff you people who read finance books either have now or have had a good chance of getting. We don't. Buying a lottery ticket is the only time in our lives we can hold a tangible dream of getting the good stuff that you already have and take for granted. We are paying for a dream, and you may not understand that because you already are living a dream. That's why we buy more tickets than you do. And that was him trying to, just like quick pause, that was him trying to interpret what they meant by that. Hi, knock knock. That was him trying to interpret what low income lottery ticket buyers are thinking. Okay. You don't have to agree with this reasoning. Buying lotto tickets when you're broke is still a bad idea, but I can kind of understand why lotto ticket sales persist. And the idea, what you're doing seems crazy, but I kind of understand why you're doing it, uncovers the root of many of our financial decisions. Few people make financial decisions purely with a spreadsheet. They make them at the dinner table or in a company meeting, places where personal history, your own unique view of the world, ego, pride, marketing, and odd incentives are scrambled together into a narrative that works for you. Jeez. There's like screaming in my background. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but I'm so sorry. Thanks for listening, guys. Thank you for the likes. Thanks for sharing the live. Okay. Where are we at? Okay. Another important point that helps explain why money decisions are so difficult and why there is so much misbehavior is to recognize how new this topic is. Oh, this part's important. If you're not listening, start listening. If you don't have a notebook, pull it out. This is very important. Okay, I'm going to start back from the beginning of this section. Another important point that helps explain why money decisions are so difficult and why there is so much misbehavior is to recognize how new this topic is. Money has been around a long time. King Alyattes of Lydia, now part of Turkey, is thought to have created the first official currency in 600 BC. But the modern foundation of money decisions, saving and investing, is based around concepts that are practically infants. Take retirement. At the end of 2018, there was a $27 trillion there was $27 trillion in U.S. retirement accounts, making it the main driver of the common investor's saving and investing decisions. But the entire concept of being entitled to retirement is at most 2 generations old. Which 2 generations, if somebody dies early, they die in their about 40s, 50s. So like, what is that, like 120 years if somebody lives 60 through each generation? So that's not a lot of time. But the entire concept of being entitled to, okay, right. Before World War II, most Americans worked until they died. That was the expectation and the reality. The labor force Sorry. But most Americans worked until they died. That was the expectation and the reality. The labor force participation rate of men aged 65 and over was above 50% until the 1940s, which there is a chart here in the book that shows like what percentage of people worked till how long and what year type thing. Social Security aimed to change this, but its initial benefits were nothing close to a proper pension. When Ida Mae Fuller cashed the first Social Security check in 1940, it was for $22.54, or $416 adjusted for inflation. It was not until the 1980s that the average Social Security check for retirees exceeded $1,000 a month adjusted for inflation. More than a quarter of Americans over age 65 were classified by the Census Bureau as living in poverty until the late 1960s. There is a widespread belief along the lines of everyone used to have a private pension, but this is wildly exaggerated. The Employee Benefit Research Institute explains only a quarter of those aged 65 or older had pension income in 1975. Among that lucky minority, only 15% of household income came from a pension. The New York Times wrote in 1955 about the growing desire, but continued inability to retire. Oh. To rephrase an old saying, everyone talks about retirement, but apparently very few do anything about it. It was not until the 1980s that the idea that everyone deserves and should have a dignified retirement took hold, and the way to get that dignified retirement ever since has been an expectation that everyone will save and invest their own money. Let me reiterate how new this idea is. The 401k, the backbone savings vehicle of American retirement, did not exist until 1978. The Roth IRA was not born until 1998. If it were a person, it would be barely old enough to drink. Well, I was born in 2000, so this book came out a little bit ago, but, let me go back. Let me just real quick. If you weren't paying attention, pay attention real quick. Let me reiterate how new the idea is. The 401k, the backbone savings vehicle of American retirement, did not exist until 1978. The Roth IRA was not born until 1998. That's 2 years before I was born. That's like what? That's like the start of Gen Z. When did Gen Z start? 98 or 99? I'm pretty sure because the end of the last generation was like 96, 98. So like the birth of Gen Z was when the Roth IRA came out. So I try to get, we'll come back. We'll come back to it because I like to discuss it. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Okay. I got lost. Okay. It should surprise no one that many of us are bad at saving and investing for retirement. We're not crazy. We're all just newbies. Same goes for college. The share of Americans over age 25 with a bachelor's degree has gone from less than 1 in 20 in 1940 to 1 in 4 by 2015. The average college tuition over that time rose more than fourfold adjusted for inflation. Something so big and so important hitting society so fast explains why, for example, so many people have made poor decisions with student loans over the last 20 years. There is not decades of accumulated experience to even attempt to learn from. We're winging it. Oh my God, I'm getting chills. Same for index funds, which are less than 50 years old, and hedge funds that didn't take off until the last 25 years. Even widespread use of consumer debt, mortgages, credit cards, and car loans did not take off until after World War II, when the GI Bill made it easier for millions of Americans to borrow. Dogs were domesticated 10,000 years ago and still retain some behaviors of their wild ancestors. Yet here we are, with between 20 and 50 years of experience in the modern financial system, hoping to be perfectly acclimated. Oh my God, okay. For a topic that is so influenced by emotion versus fact, this is a problem, and it helps explain why we don't always do what we're supposed to do with money. We all do crazy stuff with money because we're all relatively new to this game, and what looks crazy to you might make sense to me, but no one is crazy. We all make decisions based on our own unique experiences that seem to make sense to us in a given moment. Now let me tell you a story about how Bill Gates got rich, and that's chapter 2, right? Luck and risk. Yo! I'm sorry to scream at y'all like that. I'm sorry to scream. I'm so excited. I'm so glad that we finally got to this book, okay? That was the first chapter of The Psychology of Money. Now, while I still got y'all here, for those of y'all who are brand spanking new and you don't know, I like to go back over the chapter and teach what I read so that we can make sure that we got the information from that chapter. So in chapter 1, he was talking a lot about how the way that you're raised and the market that you're raised in and how it can affect your future investing biases. Now, I really want to get in on the very end section where he talks about when the 401k, when the Roth IRA and all of that came around. I feel like that's all extremely important information, and I feel like that completely changed everything for me. Like, really quick, how was your guys's, like, how was money when you were growing up? Like, how did it affect your life as you were growing up? Because, believe it or not, that's extremely important as to how you see money nowadays as an adult or as an older individual. But it's, like, literally, the Roth IRA was not born until 1998. 1998, some people are already fully developed. Like, some people's parents were already fully developed by that point. Like, 1998, some people's parents were already at, like, the full developed point, like the average of 25, already fully developed, and had to unlearn everything that they learned about money and completely flip the script, because modern day investing and saving and all of that stuff is so fresh. Like, the only reason why I'm emphasizing the fact that it's fresh is so that you can remember to show some grace to the people around you. Financial literacy is not taught in schools. Financial wealth, mental wealth, ways to become a better person, those things are not taught in schools. That stuff is so fresh still. And I'm so glad I get to be here. Oh my God, I'm so glad I get to be here. I'm so happy that we got to this book, dude. And it's like index funds, which are less than 50 years old, and hedge funds, which didn't take off until the last 25 years. Even widespread use of consumer debt, mortgages, credit cards, and car loans did not take off until after World War II. After World War II. Like, this modern day savings and investing and stuff like that, all of this stuff is not brand new because it's coming out of that, but all of this stuff is still very new. And I try to think about it like, some people are lucky. Some people's parents caught on to the curve, and when their parents die, God forbid, something happens to anybody's parents in here. When their parents die, they get left behind a house. They get left behind a retirement. They get left behind savings. They get left behind a trust fund. Some people do not get that luxury. So the fact that I get to come here and read stuff like this, I am so happy to be here. I am so happy to be here. Dude, if you wanted to follow a content creator that's excited, you met her. Dude. So yeah, that was chapter 1 of the book. So let me go back and calm down just a little bit so we can go back through. See what I can get off of the first section. So how Morgan Housel has, I guess, structured this book. How Morgan Housel has decided to structure this book was he structured it in a way that's a little bit less boring. So he's not telling us, hey, this is how money works. He's more like, hey, this is a story that would make the rest of this chapter make sense. So he gave us a story of how JFK lived his life during the Great Depression. JFK was like, I never even experienced the Great Depression. My family had all of this stuff and all these assets, so I never even had to worry about the Great Depression. JFK was traveling the world, living his best, okay? There were people out there who were starving. So he's saying in this first chapter that it is based on how you were raised as a kid and how your early years as an adult would show how you handle money. Like, some people my age experienced money differently, so they'll never invest. They'll never save money. That's just not something that, well, okay, I'm not gonna say never save money, but they'll never invest because how they experience investing, they're like, yeah, no, I would never put my money into that. I am like, take it, make me more money, make my money make money for me, do it, because okay, anyways. So during the first portion of the chapter, when we were talking about inflation and inflation for stocks, there's this right here, which shows a chart from the age and the year. Oh shit. Wait, what is that? That's not year. Rebased to 1 at age 13, and then the age. What stocks did your teens? What stocks did in your teens and 20s? Okay. So the two lines are based on the people born in 1950 and the people born in 1970. As you could see, somebody born in 1970 is going to be like, look, the stock market was doing its dang job when I was an adult. So those people are probably a lot more likely to have invested, right? The people in the 1950s probably never even paid attention to the stock market throughout their entirety of their lives, type thing. Those people are in their 70s now, so they're probably like, yeah, we never did all of that investing stuff, all this new age. You know what I'm saying? What's up, Pac? Welcome back. Nice to see ya. Nice to see ya. Yes, guys. I'm so excited. So excited. And then we've got another one that says what inflation did to prices in your teens and 20s if you were born in 1960 and if you were born in 1990. Now, as you can see, 1960, they had a little bit more of a curve. So they probably were like, let me put a few dollars in, a few little dollars, something quick. And then the people in the 1990s, they saw like a slower curve, but it was there, But see, the thing is about investing is the market could go up by 10 times over the span of 20 years, but you'd never hear about it. You'd only hear about how it dropped 8% in 24 hours because nobody really spreads news like that. Nobody really spreads that type of news. So it's all based on your own research ultimately and coming down to your own conclusions and unlearning things that you were taught as a child and understanding that your decisions might be based off of what you were taught as a child. I'm currently trying to figure out the behaviors behind that because once I figure them out, I could teach them to you guys and then we can all get out the hood. Even though I know some of y'all watching this probably ain't even in the hood and y'all are like, what are you talking about, Des? I'm in the hood. So if you're not in the hood, cool. Keep staying. We all can learn from each other. If you're not in the hood, you can teach me something because I'm trying to get out, right? And then there's this right here. It's another one. And this one is the labor force participation rate for men age 65 plus. So in 1880, 78% of men age 65 plus were still working jobs. Listen, I haven't even hit 30 and I don't want to work anymore. So imagine being 65 plus working still. But it was the thing. Like it was the thing in the 1800s to still be working past 65. And it wasn't until like the 1940s, 1950s that number really started to drop below like 50. Because in 1940, 44% of men age 65 plus were working. But that was that World War II era? Does anybody know what year World War II happened in? Thank you so much for the likes and the love. I appreciate it. I don't know. I don't want to be part of that statistic, though, for sure. We don't have any history nerds in here. Nobody knows when World War II happened. Let me see. I don't know. But yeah, that was the first chapter of The Psychology of Money. I unfortunately was unable to find my bookmark, so we're going to have to use the same bookmark that we used on the old book, guys. I know. I said I'd give you a decision, but I guess you won't get one until tomorrow, because I don't know where I put all my bookmarks. I have like 10 bookmarks somewhere in this house. Somewhere in this room. Somewhere scattered in the maze. But yeah, the live was supposed to be an hour long. It did not end up being that long. I did not end up reading that long. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for coming into the live today and being a part of this. I appreciate those of you guys that followed me today. I would like to applaud you guys. Oh, we're not done. Oh my gosh, guys, I got us another book. Sorry, that's my dog Loki. He sits behind me. So this book is called The 44 Laws of Peace. Right, really quickly, just before we end the live, I want to start our first week off. So the first law of peace is called, it says be present, and it is a 2-page thing. So it says the present moment is where life takes place. The past cannot be changed, and the future is not really live. And it's, wait, what? It's a mere fragment of, and the future is not guaranteed. Okay, I was on the wrong line. It is a mere fragment of time, and a mere fragment of time in which we really live. And it's this fraction of time that any of us can lose. Oh my God, hold on. Where's my bookmark? Because it's like I can't read right now. Hold on, let me borrow the bookmark. Let me start over. I got this. Okay, the present moment. Okay, 44 Laws of Peace. Law number 1, be present. The present moment is where life takes place. The past cannot be changed and the future is not guaranteed. It is a mere fragment of time in which we really live. And it's the fraction of time that any of us can't stand to lose. Every time you distract yourself with anxious thoughts of the past or future, you give up the present. This would be forgivable if you had power over the past or the future, but you don't. Regardless of how much you cry, the only moment of time you have any control over is right now. Work to understand this, and you will be more careful with how you spend your time. Don't be like those that give up the present to anxiously rehearse social situations that may never take place. Don't spend your time berating yourself over a past mistake, and don't get carried away longing for pleasant moments that are no more. For how can you make any new ones if your head is stuck in the past? Many are not aware that there is another way to live. They think these anxieties are as a part of them as the fingers on their hand. So instead of looking for a solution, they look for a distraction. Never spending time in their own company, they go to bed listening to anything but their thoughts, and any moment of downtime is stolen by the consumption of media, anything to distract from the mind, so as long as they can escape their thoughts. Jeez, people are getting clocked right now. Know that these distractions offer only momentary relief, but that true peace can be found by living in the present, even when the present is boring. The person who is thinking about nothing but the cleanliness of his teeth when he is brushing his teeth is at peace. I like that. He is living completely in the moment. His thoughts are directed toward that which he can control, and his mind is not held captive by anxious thoughts, which are useless in the moment. The same goes for the man who doesn't let his mind wander when speaking with friends or family, but instead lends his attention to those right in front of him. He is truly living. Appreciate the now, for it becomes the memories you look back on so fondly. Living in the present is an important step in calming the mind. So make the effort to be deeply involved with the current moment, whatever task may be at hand. When you catch yourself drifting from the present, obsessing in thought over the past or future, bring yourself back to what's in front of you. This will be difficult, but it will become easier the more you practice. The entire future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. That was an exclamation point at the end of that. So these two books I do have in my showcase. So if you guys popped over to my profile, you guys would be able to see these two books in my showcase. They should be the top two because these are the two that I'm working on right now. Oh my gosh. We learned a lot today. We went through a lot today. I have decided that I'm going to take these lives and I'm going to reuse them. But we got through the first chapter of The Psychology of Money, which basically went over how you view money and how you growing up gets you there. And then we went through our first law today, which is being present, being in the present moment and how it can help you keep your peace. The 44 Laws of Peace, The Psychology of Money are both in my showcase. Feel free to slide by my profile